Hello and welcome to another episode of Meet the Author live from book publisher New Degree Press or NDP. I'm your host, John Saunders. Already see the chat alive and well. Jason, Miriam, thanks for jumping on there. For those who don't know, NDP is part of Manuscripts, Inc. This enterprise has now published over 1,700 authors from 6 continents and earned a spot on the Inc. 5000 list for the second year in a row. This is the fastest growing privately held companies in America. Think you have a book in you? Want to start or accelerate your movement in the next 12 to 15 months? Visit manuscripts.com to learn more. This program, this is a comprehensive coaching program that will take you from idea to published book. Not just published, but published like a second-time author, which includes audience creation and activation. Really, really important parts of the journey. Today, we're doing a new segment of Meet the Author Live. This is an opportunity to learn everything valuable there is to know about the author, and we can answer your questions live in the chat. So be sure to put your questions and comments in the chat, and we will do our best to get to those. First up, to start, to make sure we know how to use the chat and we can see how it works, please let us know where you're calling in from. Please drop in the chat where you're joining us from, and say hello to Suzanne, our newest author here today. So Suzanne, who just published her book, I'm Supposed to Be Doing This, An Adult Gap Year, is now out on Amazon or wherever you get books online. She also has a new podcast coming out from New Degree Press on Monday, the 20th. I'll put that up there on the screen, Monday at the 20th at 9 a.m. So you can definitely go on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and find that. And on YouTube, you can actually set an alert for yourself to see it when it actually pops up. Quick bio on Suzanne, and we'll jump into the questions. Suzanne Roske is a leadership coach, taco and mezcal enthusiast, public speaker, and now author. For 25 years, she was the picture of objective success. Excuse me. A partner at a global management consulting firm, guiding Fortune 500 companies through business and team transformations. And then she embarked on her biggest transformation yet, her own. Suzanne stepped away from corporate life and into an adult gap year in Oaxaca, Mexico, spelled with an O. Suzanne is the founder and CEO of Vamanos Executive Coaching, where she helps people and teams connect to their values, purpose, and mission so they can harness their momentum, show up as the impactful leaders they were meant to be, and unlock their full potential. Love your bio. Love your story. So great to see you here today, Suzanne.
John, it's so great to be here. And I just want to say hi to everybody who's joining. Thank you so much for taking your time and being here this afternoon or this morning, depending upon where you're calling in from.
We already have a vibrant chat out there. I see Miriam on there, Jason Patton, Shannon Schottler all the way from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Hello, Varun.
Varun, hi, Suzanne. Great to see you from Dallas, Texas. Oh, and there's Hannah all the way from Portland, Oregon. Great to see you on there, Hannah. Thank you all for joining us. And please keep dropping those in the chat and any comments or questions you have. But Suzanne, my first question, how does it feel to have a book out there wherever you buy books online?
Is surreal a good answer?
Totally.
It just feels so it's amazing. First of all, like to have the book, to have it be up to the first time I saw it, like on Amazon and went and I was like, oh my God, there's the cover. It's on there. Somebody can purchase it. And I think that the bigger thing, because even it felt cool to see it on Amazon, but when I received the physical book, that was a completely different feeling to have it actually be tactile and put it in my hands and just kind of look at it and flip the pages and hear that yeah, it's really, really something that I didn't anticipate ever in my life, and it's a joy.
So cool. Yeah, it is just surreal to see somebody, see your own book on Amazon with your name on it. You're like, wait a minute, that's me, right?
Yeah.
So bizarre. Now, we have your cover in the upper right-hand corner, my right-hand side here, just kind of above your left shoulder. Love this picture. Suzanne, can you tell us a little bit about this picture, where it is and what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a beautiful, beautiful place. It's called Irve al Agua, and it is in Oaxaca. It's about an hour and a half outside of Oaxaca City itself. And it is they call it a petrified waterfall. It's natural springs that bubble up and the water falls over the side and calcifies. And so it looks like a waterfall that has been petrified. My son actually took the picture while we were there. We were out kind of on the edge looking over, and I just kind of put my hands up because it just was a joyous moment. The view is beautiful, and Zane snapped the picture, and it just felt right when I went to do the cover design.
That is so cool. Did you go through a couple iterations first and then say, wait a minute, I've got this fantastic photo? Is that kind of how it happened?
It was one of three options. I sort of created a couple of different iterations based upon a exercise that we were asked to do, this or that. So you like this cover, and if you like this cover, then that would be the cover that would represent your book. And so this was one of the options. And then there was another one with a hummingbird that was on there, and then another that I kind of hand drew of the city streets of Oaxaca. But I think that he secretly was leaning towards this one just because the entire experience in Mexico was about myself and my family. And so having a picture that kind of represented both in one felt really kind of spot on.
That is so cool. And I definitely want to get into a few questions about your book here in a few minutes. And an adult gap year, what's that all about? But just real quick for our listeners who maybe haven't written a book before or thinking about it, what was the author journey like for you?
So I kind of alluded to the fact that it feels surreal to have the book because I never had this like desire. It wasn't a bucket list item to write a book, publish a book. So I call myself the accidental author. And I just kind of fell into it where I was trying to write an article and it was a bit too long. And someone pointed me to the Creative Writer Circle with Georgetown and Professor Custer. And so I got involved with that. And I found the journey to be really inspiring in many ways. You enter in with a cohort model. And so having the support, and you mentioned looking at this and going about writing like a second time author. So they give you all the tips and tricks. And what it did for me, if I broke it down, is it took it from what felt daunting, the idea of writing a book, sitting down at the computer, blank piece of paper, staring back at you, and it made it doable. And I would say that was what my author's journey was like, of feeling overwhelmed at times, having it feel very daunting, having the support of the community, and then moving to doable very, very quickly.
That is so cool. I'm supposed to be, and you're supposed to be doing this, Suzanne, right? Not only the adult gap here, but here out telling your story. And
Yes.
I love how you really saw the process and how the whole program breaks it down into sort of actionable bite-sized chunks. So
Mhm.
there's never, well, there's never this sort of that big balloon thing. Of course, if you don't write for weeks on end, then there is, right? But
Right.
but if you stay along with the program, it tends to be a bit more manageable. So I'm supposed to be doing this, an adult gap year, available on Amazon. I dropped the link in the chat. It's available for 99 cents right now for a little bit longer. Is that right?
A little bit longer. The ebook is available for 99 cents. And if everyone could, give a little shout out and love to the Amazon gods, the paperback will be up and available within the next day or so.
That is amazing. And I would tell you, I think I told you this right after the podcast interview, Suzanne, that you now hold the record for the number of times I've been given chills interviewing somebody because I found your stories just so touching and compelling as you shared them. And it happened a lot this season, I will say, but I think you took the record for the most number of times because there's so many compelling stories in here that really pulled me in. And certainly go out and check out the podcast, which is coming out Monday, and hear the longer version, but we're going to get into those a little bit today. But first, Suzanne, why did you write this book? What drove you to do it?
So I wrote the book because I went through a period, and it started where I started to hear the little voice inside of me that said, am I really supposed to be doing this? Is this it? And I squashed it down. And I squashed it down deep so I didn't hear it. It would bubble up again and again. And at one point, and this was back in 2014 when I was going up for partner, I actually experienced some pretty significant burnout where I had some suicidal ideation. It was one evening, and I just had this thought of, I wonder, what else there is, and should I really be here? And I actually thought about putting a gun in my mouth. And I got help, but I also didn't tell anyone other than a therapist because I had worked really hard to be getting where I was, and I didn't want anyone to think that I couldn't handle it. Fast forward to the pandemic, and I tell my company I'm going to take this gap year, I'm going to take a sabbatical, move the family to Mexico. And as I'm talking to people in preparation to go, while I'm there and while I'm coming back, so many people said to me, "You're so brave. I wish I could do something like this. But I've worked too long, too hard." And I realized that we all just are quiet about the fact that sometimes we're not happy and sometimes we have burnout. And so I wanted people to be able to see and share my story in a way that would allow people to see there's another path. And sometimes the path is moving to Mexico or doing something really dramatic. And sometimes the path is making small tweaks to find more joy in your life. And that's the reason I wrote the book. I wanted to share the story.
It's amazing how many stories I've heard in the last sort of 3, 6 months. Not that many, but a handful of very deep stories about this journey of burnout. Certainly Hannah Austin was on here the other day, talked
Mhm.
about it. Miriam Zilberlake talked about it. Jim Young last season talked about it. And here you are now. So, and all of you took action and did something about it. And you did something a bit more unusual than everybody, right? Which was, what anyone would do. Let's take our kids and move to Mexico for a year. Wow. Can you take us through that journey of how you actually made that decision?
Yeah, I will. It wasn't a huge journey. So it was July 14th of 2020. And in the afternoon, I got the ping of the email and I knew the email was coming, but somehow I wasn't prepared for it. And it was from the school district that's saying like almost every other kid in the world, we are not going to return to in-person school. And I was just heartbroken. And I looked and I said, I can't do this anymore. And that little voice that had started and I had kept her quiet for so long, she screamed at the top of her lungs, "You can do better. You must do better." I just didn't have any idea at that moment what better was, but I knew we were not going to survive as a family going through homeschooling, all of us being around one another. And so I went for a walk with the dog, and sort of like that other voice, it got planted in my head. We had always talked about doing something international. And I was like, what if this was the year? The kids can Zoom into school. My husband can work remotely. He's always done that. So this shouldn't be a big deal. And I could take a time to figure out what it is that I'm truly supposed to be doing. And I ran back to the house. I proposed my idea to my husband, and he looked at me and like got this like weird look on his face. And I'm sure it was 2 seconds, 3 seconds tops of him thinking about it. But for me, it was like time and space stopped and everything was going slow. And I didn't know what he was going to do if he said no, because in my mind, it was the only logical solution, which I know sounds crazy that this was it. Like, let's move to a different country. But he finally said like, yeah, we're going, let's go. And so, I mean, it was literally 2 hours from the time that I got the email until my husband was on board. It was within 2 weeks. We had the house arranged for, we still hadn't told our kids yet. And within 8 weeks, we were there. So it wasn't a huge journey that we took in time, but in actions and changing our perspective, it was massive.
I almost feel like there's a theme song here. I'm hearing kind of the Gilligan's Island theme song to this thing all of a sudden on how this all came together. But I love it. So COVID shuts down the schools. You're sort of hit a wall with the demands of your career,
Mhm.
and you reached out to some friends, as I recall, that had some connections in Mexico. I think there were only 3 countries you could go to at that time from America. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, I think it was like Kazakhstan. There was an island in the Caribbean, which felt really small, and Mexico. And, Mexico seemed like the best option for a lot of reasons, partially because Kazakhstan didn't seem all that appealing. But there were a lot of places that we could look to. And we had some friends who at that point were at the embassy in Mexico City. So we got some good advice about, were we in crazy to try to attempt this? Would this be a good use of our time? And gave us a couple of cities to take a look at. And I had never been to Oaxaca. I could barely pronounce the name of the city. And I took one look at the curated pictures through Google and I was like, that's it, we're going.
So cool. So you had that connection. You had very limited options. I mean, Kazakhstan, I think that's where Borat's from, if I recall, but maybe what it's most famous for, if I recall correctly. Does that sound right?
I think it does sound right. I'm not 100% certain though.
I think it is. I think it is. So you spent this year down there. I recall when you first arrived, you thought, you know what, I'm going to sign up for a yoga treat. Can you tell us a yoga treat, a yoga retreat? Can you tell us a little bit about that opening adventure?
Yeah, so I decided to say yes to many things that I generally wouldn't say yes to, and one of them was a yoga retreat, and it was advertised on Facebook with beautiful views of the Pacific Ocean, and it seemed perfect. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go. Now, getting to Mazunte in Oaxaca is about a 220-kilometer drive. So roughly 120 miles, but it takes 7 hours to drive over the mountains. So I drove there by myself. Actually, I had a person join in the car with me from a safety perspective who could speak Spanish, and I thought would be a great buddy. But she crawled into the back and was like, I get a little woozy in the car, so I'm just going to like hunker down through these curves. So she slept for 6.5 of the 7-hour drive. And we get there, and our first exercise that we do, the instructor says, hey, by the way, this is going to be a silent retreat. And I was like, wait, that was not part of the advertisement. And so I embarked on a silent yoga retreat, and it was hard, and it made me itchy and uncomfortable. And all I wanted to do was speak because I felt like that was the only thing to do. And it was transformative once I just got tired of listening to my own chatter and annoyed with myself, that I actually was able to sit in the silence and appreciate it. And I started to get some direction from my intuition that I could actually hear of directions that I needed to go and what I ultimately was supposed to be doing. It wasn't the answer, but it was a piece to the puzzle.
Moving in the right direction. Getting a lot of great comments in the chat here from our friends that are really appreciating your story. Thank you for sharing your deeply personal story, and feel so privileged with you in this community. Your name got blocked there, whoever that was. Sometimes LinkedIn does that if you don't put your name in. Another caller from Boston here. I like this one, Suzanne. Such an amazing mentor. Can't wait to the hard copy to be released. Lauren, thank you for jumping on here. Miriam really pointing out something so important, no doubt epidemic for many of us out there. And I think Beth captured it here nicely too. Thanks for your vulnerability and openness. That certainly comes through so loud and clear in the full podcast interview. So I would definitely encourage folks to definitely go check that out. And a nice note here from Stephen. Stephen, thank you for that nice note for Suzanne. Great to see you. So silent retreat, trying new things. Holy cow, I'm in Mexico. What the heck am I doing here? How did that experience really expand your learning and really help with the book, would you say?
Well, I think that it transformed me as a person completely. The idea that I had always been on the corporate treadmill, hamster wheel, whatever mill you want it to be, I was on it. I was running ever faster and faster. I was sort of wired like that from the time I was a child. I loved having a goal and going out to get the goal. And when we were here in the States, I equated it, John, you and I talked about it being a donut eating contest, and suddenly realizing that the prize for winning was more donuts. And I had no idea what else I wanted to eat other than donuts, because I had been told that's what I wanted to eat. And that's all I had been fed for my entire, I would say my entire life. I just kept going after the donuts. And I learned in Mexico to really slow down, to let go of other people's expectations and some of the expectations I had put on myself, and listen to that voice of intuition. And I think the biggest thing that comes away from doing all this is I'm a heck of a lot braver than I ever gave myself credit for. And really, that intuition and the knowing that I have inside of me leads the way. And so often we just don't listen. We don't have the space and the capacity to listen to our own intuition. And being in Mexico gave me the freedom to hear that voice. Some of it was the silent retreat. Some of it was trying new things. Some of it was just being placed in situations where, the GPS said go one way, you're turning left, and all of a sudden you're in a field of corn, and you're like, really? This is the way we're supposed to go? Well, I don't know. I guess I'm just going to follow it. And then the road ends, and you're like, now what? And you just had to figure it out. And in all instances, I figured it out. And that was a really empowering feeling. So I think that idea of courage comes through loud and clear for me, and is something that I didn't necessarily believe about myself before.
Wow. Finding the courage, finding the space to find yourself and hear that voice so you can really understand what it is you need. I want to ask you one more story about that very specific topic because I think it's an interesting one. And it's related to shoes, Suzanne. As I recall, your footwear evolved throughout the journey in Mexico. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It did. I happen to think in metaphors a lot. And apparently, as I was writing the book, the shoe metaphor kept coming back to me. But I always thought about high heels as my kind of super suit or superpower. When I wanted to feel confident in a work environment, I would don a pair of high heels, whether it was in the boardroom, on the stage, at a presentation. Heels were the way that I felt more powerful and in command of the situation. And interestingly enough, I even threw in a pair of heels when we were packing to go to Mexico, much to the chagrin of my husband. They ended up being a really terrible decision because the streets are cobblestoned, and the first time and only time I tried to wear them, I rolled my ankle and ended up on my hands and knees. But I came to view the heels ultimately as a costume. And when we got there, because of the cobblestones, I needed more practical shoes. And I bought a pair of Birkenstocks. I'd always wanted Birkenstocks, but I have really large feet, and I was afraid I'd be judged for them. And ultimately, one of the benefits of Birkenstocks is they mold to your feet. And I realized as time progressed in Oaxaca, the life I was creating was molding to myself, and I wasn't wearing a costume anymore. So I think there's this really interesting kind of analogy between the heels and the costume and the Birkenstocks, and really just this acceptance of what felt true and honest of who I am in the life that I really wanted to leave going forward.
Unbelievable. And I really like this theme you keep going back to of this sort of costume and letting go of other people's expectations of what you're supposed to be doing, right?
Mhm.
Which is such a big, big part of this story. And you said that high heels for many years were your sort of superpower, your power move. Suzanne, last question before we jump into the rapid fire questions. What would you say your superpower is now?
Mm. I think my superpower now is I'm really good at holding space for myself, for others, and helping people to tap into that space where they can see that life that they want to live and how they get there. And I call it unlocking their full potential. I think that's my superpower, is being able to hold that space and quiet for folks.
And has nothing to do with the shoes you're wearing, does it?
It doesn't. Now, I didn't get rid of all my heels.
There's still a couple left in the closet.
I have more Birkenstocks now, though.
Good. That is lovely. All right. We're going to jump into the rapid fire questions here, ladies and gentlemen. My favorite part. We're going to learn everything important there is to know about Suzanne. And if you do have further questions, please continue to drop them in the chat comments. We really appreciate that. And we'll wrap this up in just a few minutes here. But Suzanne, my favorite and first question here. Favorite sandwich?
Philly cheesesteak.
Wow. After all that time in Mexico, nothing? No.
Well, okay. You didn't ask me my favorite taco.
Oh,
but
sorry.
Favorite sandwich is a Philly cheesesteak, just meat and cheese, white American, unless I'm in South Philly, and then I go with whiz. And nothing, no fried onions, no peppers, just meat and cheese.
All right. Let's go with taco then.
Okay. Oh, taco. Tacos al pastor from La Flamita Mix. That's where I would go. If I could have any food right now, it would be some tacos al pastor.
I mean, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. Incredible. Favorite color?
Orange.
What a beautiful color. And yet, well, I was going to say not on your cover, but it's a photograph. Now, this is going to be a tricky one for you. Favorite or most memorable vacation spot?
I know I should say Oaxaca, right? But I would say that feels so much more like home now that it's hard to put it into the vacation spot. So I will go with a Spain. We went a couple years ago. We went to Mallorca, and then we went hiking in the Picos de Europa, and it was another place that is just beautiful from a vacation spot.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Getting such mileage out of your new skill, Spanish. The Spanish
There we
language.
go.
I love it. Scariest animal, Suzanne.
Birds,
Interesting.
all kinds, any of them.
We're gonna have to talk about that more later. Better fruit, apples or bananas?
Apples, Honeycrisp.
Finally, somebody got it right. Thank you. Favorite or most memorable movie?
So I have two. I love The Goonies. I will watch it anytime that it's on, and Almost Famous.
So good. I love the Goonies. This one always gives us some great insights here. First concert you went to?
Jimmy Buffett.
Wow. Parrot Head? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, with my family.
Favorite smell?
Two. The smell of low tide and the smell of the desert after it rains.
Wow. A lot of water, aquatic themes here. Last photo on your phone?
It's actually all my books in front of the post office. So if you are part of the authors community in the pre-sale, they are in the mail.
Amazing. That's always a fun photo when you actually get them all packed up through the pre-sale buyers, you sign them, and you're off to the post office. Incredible. So those went out this week, right?
Yes, they did.
So look for those in the mail, all of Suzanne's many pre-sale buyers. Favorite song to sing with or without an audience?
It is, and this may be going too far into everything you need to know about me. It is She's Gone by Hall & Oates, which is also what I want played at my funeral. Because I just think it's funny.
Be ironic, wouldn't it? I love it. What is one thing you own that you really need to get rid of, throw
Oh
out?
my God. Okay. It is a panini maker. And it is in my pantry. And I have this thing, like if you don't use stuff within like 3 months, it has to go. And every 2 months and 30 days, my kids pull it out and they make one sandwich and put it away for another 3 months. And it drives me bananas. And I just want to get rid of this stupid panini maker.
I mean, do they have a clock? Do they mark it on their calendars? That is
I
amazing.
think it's a conspiracy against me.
All right. We've got this book out. We've got this business up and running now, Vamonos Executive Consulting. What is your most audacious goal for 2023?
I want to be on a TED Talk.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Vamonos Coaching, Suzanne Roske. You heard it here first. Well on your way. I think you're already working on some nominations for that, if I recall correctly.
That might be.
That is really cool. Good luck with that. No doubt you'll make that happen. What's a praise quote from the book you'd like to share with our listeners? I know you had many amazing ones. What's one we could share today?
Yeah, I had many amazing ones, but I just received a new one that was more recent, and it says, "Who among us hasn't wondered what that other path would look like?" Suzanne bravely took that risk and found fulfillment and happiness that even she could have never imagined. I'm supposed to be doing this may very well be the inspiration you need. And that's from Peter Alexander with NBC News, who's also a correspondent on the Today Show.
Very well. How did you track that guy down? That's pretty good.
It wasn't as hard as you may think. He happens to be a neighbor, so I just kind of did some neighbor talking.
Brilliant. Go with, we all have these amazing networks in our lives, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of an ask. Well done. Favorite writing location as you went throughout the journey?
I actually really liked writing when I was on a plane.
Interesting.
I was like stuck, confined, couldn't get up. So when I was doing some long distance traveling across the country, I could get a lot done. And I really liked the quiet and the focus.
That white noise of the engine. Yeah. Interesting. Most memorable moment in the writing journey?
I think the most memorable moment was writing the last chapter. And I didn't know it was going to be the last chapter at the time, but it's called Bittersweet. And it's about my last trip into Centro by myself. And I started it, and there's a whole chocolate kind of bent to it, and it just flowed. I mean, I wrote it in maybe 20 minutes. And
an entire chapter.
An entire chapter.
Wow.
And I like hit the last period, and I was like, that's it. That's the end.
That is so cool. It's so fascinating when that happens with the book, right? I mean, I remember, I think it was the fourth chapter of my book that I was struggling with the first few, and then suddenly like you hit that flow state where the stories connect with you, and it sounds like that certainly happened there.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. What would you say to those considering writing a book, Suzanne?
I would say do it. I would say if you have a story in you, you have a point of view, it's a gift that you actually in some ways have an obligation to share it with the world, because if you keep it to yourself, almost how dare you do that? So I'd say go ahead and do it. Try it.
How dare you? I should be doing this, right?
Yeah.
Describe your writing journey in 5 words, please.
Unexpected,
Hmm.
freeing, creative. Was that 3?
I'm on 3.
Okay, good. I had lost my fingers there for a second. Yeah, inspirational
Oh, beautiful.
and connective.
Unbelievable. Such an amazing story, such a journey you've been on. And talk about bravery, right? You took a year off, you took your kids and family, went to Mexico, celebrated all the holidays there throughout the year, and spent that time down there. And here you're on the other side of it, living your best life, soon to be on a TED Talk. Closing thoughts for our listeners here, my friend. And then I want to jump to the comments. We've got a bunch still here sitting in the chat here.
I would just say kind of, everybody thinks there's this one path that's ahead of them. And, there's not. You have one life, and how are you going to make it the most impactful that you can? And nobody ever, there's that, it's the cliche of nobody sits on their deathbed and says, I wish I had worked more. I wish I had put more hours in. They wish they had spent more time with their family. They wish they had made an impact in their community. And we all have that ability to adjust what we're doing and do something that's a little bit different. It doesn't have to be crazy and wild different, but just the smallest step to make an impact on the joy and fulfillment that you're getting out of your own life.
So powerful. Love that message. Hannah, certainly appreciating it too. Loves the high heel story. Jason, Patton jumping in here. We get trapped in society's expectations, as you spoke of, and the ruthless, oh, I like that, Jason, ruthless corporate world. Thank you for showing people a different way. Love that. Here's a new name on the board here, Court Matten.
Nathan. Hi, Court.
Nathan. Great personal story. So glad you found your passion. Would love any advice on those, how those in business can help their peers who might be going through something similar. Oh, thoughts on that from Court?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have to give people that time and space. It is so hard when we are on it's almost autopilot. We go from task to task or Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, and we don't give ourselves the time to just sit down and allow for the creativity and allow for the possibility to sneak in. And Court, we can connect and talk further.
Creating space.
Plus, it'll be great to see you.
Such a power, right? Thank you, Court. It's so powerful to give people that space to just listen, right? And let them listen to themselves and share their thoughts. And so often we don't do that because we're running and trying to get this or that done. A few more notes in the chat. I just want to jump on here. The donut analogy, right? You eat a bunch of donuts, you get more donuts. Congratulations.
Exactly.
James Childachimo, is that? Do I get this right?
It's Chimo, but he knows me as calling him Chimichanga. So
seems
fitting, right?
Seems fitting. Looking forward to getting inspired by your book. In my life currently, as we have been in the trenches, a few projects back today. Love it. An old work colleague, it sounds like. Jason jumped on here again, enjoying your funeral song. Thank you for that, Jason. And last note here, congratulations from Rebecca Juckett.
Thanks, Rebecca.
What an amazing story. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on the comments. Suzanne, so great to see you. Thank you for being on here today and sharing your story with the creator community and your message of hope and inspiration that I think we need now more than ever.
John, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure has been all mine. Thank you to our listeners for joining this episode of Meet the Author Live. Definitely go check out Suzanne's new book. I'm supposed to be doing this. Should there be an exclamation point there? I'm supposed to be doing this exclamation point, an adult gap here, wherever you buy books online, and see her full episode on the creator community podcast coming out Monday on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And join us tomorrow to meet at 12:30 p.m. to meet Xinjin Zhao right here on New Degree Press and hear about his journey how the journey to leadership starts from within. Thank you all for jumping on the chat and your active participation today. Really appreciate it. And please come back and join us tomorrow. Suzanne, great to see you.
Thanks so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining.
I'm your host of the creative community, John Saunders. Keep creating.